My career has been absolutely tied in with everything that you all do, all my working life, apart from what I did before I started to do recruitment. And what I did before I started to do recruitment, well, it was all pretty ordinary. In fact, you have standing in front of you not the amazing Angela Mortimer, you have standing in front of you probably one of the most ordinary people you've ever met in all your life. And I do want you to be certain of that, because if you're certain of that, then you also can go on and go past and do whatever you want to do. And I just tell you some of the tips that I've used to keep myself going through what have been some pretty rugged times. So let's just start off on that. To start off with, I was born after the war, but my parents were still very, very money pinching. Can you stop it moving? It's going forward. And I was always asked, what do you want to be when you grow up, by every maiden aunt that came to see me. They're maiden aunts because there weren't enough men to go around to get married to. And they'd often have little whiskers because, I don't know why they'd have little whiskers. We don't need to have whiskers, do we, these days? There are ways. And they'd ask me one year and I'd say, oh, I want to be a nurse. Or they'd ask me another year and I'd say, oh, I want to be a vet. Oh, you've changed. And with that comment, oh, you've changed, I'd almost feel as if, oh, I've made a mistake. I didn't get it right last year. I hope I got it right this year. But the following year, it would always be something else, because how the heck are you supposed to know what you want to be when you grow up? I mean, do you know what you want to be in 5 years' time? I don't. Alive, hopefully. But beyond that, one has to be grateful. And so I think it's a pretty cruel question to ask a child, but that was what you always asked, together with telling you how much you've grown since they last saw you. Pretty dull stuff. But the Cold War was happening, and in fact it was going on for an amazing amount of my life. It went on from 47 to 91, when the big fear hanging over all of us was the atomic bomb. We all thought there was going to be a big war, and then it never happened. But it was hanging over all of us, the atomic bomb. My mother reassured me, you can always hide under the kitchen table, you'll be fine. But Macmillan was in power, and he wasn't a lot to rely on. He organised a plan that was going to save the top 2,000 people. This is all right. They were all going to go and hide themselves away in a bunker. But they had to get there, first of all. And to get there, they had this lovely tube stop. It's known as Olympia, if any of you ever go to Earl's Court. The Olympia line, no one ever goes there. What on earth do you want to go there for? Well, it would take you to Stillwell, where there was a lovely little place for you to hide under the ground if you were that important. They had hospitals, canteens, everything to look after you. And they'd be told to tell their wives they're going to be gone for a month. So take a book, better take a book. There's not much by way of entertainment. But they'd be safe there governing the UK. That still left Macmillan and his parliamentarians. They had to get there too. How would they get there? Well, they'd have to go stay. They'd have to go by car. But supposing a car broke down, because they often did, well, you'd need to have 4 pennies. That's 4 pennies make a shilling. 20 shillings make a pound. That's written on my heart, because later on I had to teach decimalisation. And as I'm number dyslexic, I say that respectfully now. In those days, dyslexia hadn't been discovered, so I was just a bit stupid about numbers. But 4 pennies, you had to put in the A button and press B when they connected, and then you could talk. If it was someone who loved you, you could do reverse charges, but the Foreign Office said, no, we're not going to do that. If your car breaks down, you have 4 pennies. So every chauffeur had to have 4 pennies in the pocket, and off they jolly well went. And the RAC would help out too, because they had extra phones by the side of the road, so they all had to be members of the RAC as well. This is how the plan was going to work. On we go. On we go. And the Queen, meanwhile, was going to be cruising around the Outer Hebrides, moving in the Great Britannia every night, so no one could find her. And there I was. Let's keep me on me. There I was sweet, wasn't I? I was a very sweet child. I was very lucky because my father believed in education, and he put me through, first of all, little girls' day boarding school, where I learned to be nice and talk posh. Then on to primary school, where I got beaten up because I was the only child in school uniform, and I did talk posh and they didn't. Then on to Hastings High School, where I was almost broken completely. And I have to say, I always felt a bit bad that I couldn't cope better with moving from A stream to B stream, because I couldn't learn German, so they made cakes instead. So in C stream, I really lost my self-esteem. I thought, if that's what you think of me, that's what I think of you as well. And I really dropped out in a big way and left at the age of 16 and went on to a technical college where there were loads and loads of blokes all learning engineering and heaven knows what, and the pill had just been invented, and life was suddenly getting a little bit better. I have to say, I felt quite bad about some of this until I heard Jo Brand talking about her new book. And she went to that same high school for girls, and she hated it, and she dropped out. So if I sometimes sound a bit stroppy about life, and so does she, I blame it on that school. But I thank that school for it, because they taught me how to speak out for myself and how to always question authority, because it's not always right. And the people that drop off and come up with some really bad ideas, or some very retro ideas. And you can only make yourself secure and safe if you question everything, just to make quite sure everyone's thought about everything. And it doesn't have to be done in an unpleasant way, it just needs to be thought in that way, because that way it keeps you safe. I'm going to stay on that slide for a moment, because what happened was I grew up a bit. Every 7 years, all the cells in your body are changed. All new, made over. So if you feel a bit different, it's because you are a bit different. It's just lucky that some memories are laid down in your brain, so you're not a complete blank space every 7 years. But there I was, and what was I going to do? I went to train to be a teacher. Why? To get away from Hastings. And there I am, aged 22, 23, something like that. But what had happened in between was something very important. I was the youngest of 3 girls, and we really were not a wealthy family. My father spent every penny on our education and then ran out because I was the youngest. My mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and in those days, what did you do? Well, you just wanted to make the best of it you could for your parent, and I thought the best thing for her would be to go home, and I nursed her at home until she died. And I knew she was going to, and I knew it wouldn't be more than 6 months, and it might be a lot less, but I took out my last year at college doing that. And that was quite an amazing situation for me, because I think together with death, which we all have to cope with all these things in life. None of you is not going to lose a parent. Some of you will have done already. Some of you won't have done already. It's always hard. And it's how you face up to those things at the time. At the time, I found it very hard, and first of all, I did things which, again, hadn't been diagnosed. I became absolutely anorexic. Then I suddenly became the size of a house. And then when I realised I was the size of a house, I ate nothing but cottage cheese and apples from Boots, and I went back to being anorexic. And then I kind of settled down. And I had no idea that this was an illness. Absolutely none. And during that time, I was cheerful. I was going to the pub, having a lovely time, lots of boyfriends. And I had absolutely no idea what was going on, and survived. But I did know, I was very angry about a lot of things. Why did everyone else have parents to go and have holidays with, and I didn't? So I decided to stay on and take a degree in education, which is quite a weird thing to do, because if you're a woman, if you're blonde, you didn't need a degree. You're just going to get married and have babies. Obviously, you all know that. But I wasn't up for that at all. I certainly didn't want to be talked down to by anyone else who had a degree, whatever that magical thing was. So I did my degree in biology and psychology, which was a wonderful thing. I found myself looking down the electron microscope. Now, how many of you have done that? An amazing thing to be able to do, and actually watch cell division. I had such experiences doing that. And of course, it set me up fabulously for what was subsequently going to become my career, recruitment. Because animal behaviour is what you're looking at all the time. You're looking at the flush on the neck, you're looking at the looking away, you're looking at the body language, you're looking at everything that makes someone tell you what they think is the truth, or try and disguise it, or try very hard to explain, but you have to really listen hard and make some interpretation of all the conflicting messages that are being sent you to be able to understand what that person is actually transmitting, and then testing them with, so is this what you mean? And is that actually true? And it might have been true then, but is it true now of you? And so my interviews took this very, very different kind of style to those of most secretarial agencies, where you'd be asked, how much money do you want? How far are you prepared to travel? And what are your skills? Go and sit down and let's get your shorthand typing tested. So it was a completely revolutionary way of doing things, but in my little office, in my little room, I had no idea of that. I'd had no idea I was doing anything different I just thought I was doing things in a very sensible way that should be done. And it was extraordinary how a lot of women would actually cry, not because I'd been mean to them or asked them a horrible question, because I only ever asked questions that I wouldn't mind answering about myself, but more because no one had ever asked them those questions before. They'd just never been asked what they'd really like to do, or what they would have done if life hadn't been the way it was. And if they'd gone to university instead of their brothers, who were a bit thicker than they were, but they were boys so they had to go, what would they have read? And if they had their time again, how would they replay it? All these things which are very significant ways of finding out just what someone's made of and what they continue to be made of, and to be able to have some kind of an insight as to what the opportunity might be ahead for them and how courageous they'd be about taking up that opportunity. So that was what I was about. I did it when I was teaching. I just went on to do it when I was recruiting. And if you just look at the time which I was doing this, we were all having a lot of fun. There we are. And you couldn't be too thin, so it's quite a good time to be anorexic if you're going to be. And you couldn't have enough love. John Lennon's auntie was a tea lady just up the road in Port Sunlight at that time. And of course, you couldn't get enough rock and roll. I mean, you all know what that means. And on we go. And that's what all of the people in offices were living through. And so listening to the people who lived through that was really very entertaining for me. But it also reminded me of how I was confronted with so many fearful women who left the workplace. I've had about 4 recessions during my business life. Every time there's a recession, nothing's happening, no one's moving. Oh well, I'll leave and have a baby. Good time, why not? There's nothing else happening. And then they'd come back to the workplace and it'd be completely transformed. In 4 years, all the equipment they were used to would be gone. And worse still, there'd be some younger women coming in who were very adroit at using the new stuff. And so suddenly, from being top of the tree, they felt like worse than college leavers. They knew nothing apart from life. They knew nothing about technical equipment. So we did the sensible thing, we set up a training office for them, just to retrain them on what we knew they needed in order to employ them as temps and then get their confidence back to move into permanency. So we've been working along with the changes all the way through, and this is what they used to look like. I'm afraid they did actually, a bit like that anyway. And then we moved on to the modern one, which is where we come up to date, where we're looking at people who are leaning over the boss's shoulder, and it could easily be a female boss, hallelujah, and you're helping to work with together and helping to actually add your thoughts and thinking, well, is that best handled by an email? Or shall I make a phone call? Or would it be better, I think it needs to be you to make that phone call in order to avoid wasting 3 hours down the line because someone's going to be bursting into tears about it. So that kind of thing. So moving on, assertiveness is something which has been a vital part of my life. It's a word that when assertiveness training came out, a lot of people got very frightened, particularly the blokes, who are obviously the bosses. They're very frightened because it obviously translates into, oh my God, she's going to start arguing with me all the time now. I have enough of that at home. And now it's going to be in the office as well. No, you can't go on that. But why don't you just brush up on your technical skills? That'd be safe, wouldn't it, Elizabeth? Let's just do that and keep quiet. Spend a bit of money on the technical stuff, nothing on the personal development. There was a survey done, 50% of the people on the survey wanted to have personal development and none of the other, they had it already. But what were they getting? They were getting the bit they didn't want. So that was basically fear that these people are going to be getting above themselves. And if we can just stay on that one, Robert Maxwell, I don't know how many of you remember him, he, or did he jump or was he pushed, heading up the Mirror group and plundering everything. I was made a phone call by Peter Jay, who was his assistant. Prior to that, Peter Jay had been our ambassador in Washington. This is the kind of level I was operating at that stage. And Peter Jay rang me personally to ask me to come in and see Robert Maxwell. Do you know, I'd recruited for so many people. I'd recruited for royalty and whatever, but I just didn't want to see that man. He had such a reputation, Captain Bob of Private Eye. His reputation was being a bully. He weighed about 22 stone. He was about 6'5" tall. He was an ex-MP before he went into the newspaper group. I just didn't want to meet him because I thought he might make me feel like an idiot. And I just didn't want to be made to feel like an idiot. So the phone call came on a Wednesday. I said, I'm sorry, I'm absolutely full up. Thursday then, you can come sometime on Thursday. And I'm afraid I'm back-to-back interviews and meeting candidates. well, I am talking about Robert Maxwell. Yeah, but I'm sorry, I have some very important clients as well. Then Friday, I thought, when would be the worst time in the world for him so he'll say no? 11:45 on Friday, I do have a window. That's going to really screw up his lunch. And that'll muck up his 11 o'clocker. He'll never say yes to that. Peter J said, OK, Andrew, I'll move his diary around to accommodate that. And I heard the helicopter on that Friday morning flying over my office. I was just down the road from him and landing. I thought, oh my God, that's him. And I went along to the office, got onto the lift, the only one that went to his floor for security purposes, full of Arabs with flowing robes, all looking terribly bored and going like that because we'd been waiting so long, and I had to walk straight past them all to see the inner sanctum. I met him. It was a very easy meeting. I dressed a little bit like this, very prim. And he said, my goodness, you look like a schoolgirl. I think he imagined I was going to be about 90. I wasn't, I was about 28, 30. I think he thought I was going to have a bun and all kinds of things like that, preconceptions. And I just said, thank you very much for telling me I look like a schoolgirl. Sat down, took this job specification, and at the end of it, I said, right, that's splendid. I will help you find a member of staff. He had 5, by the way. I won't tell you what they all did. And I just said, well, this is the deal. I will find you a member of staff, but they will always be in a temporary capacity. I will never take anyone out of a permanent job on the basis, because it's a little bit of a revolving circus, it might ruin their CV, and I don't want to have that on my shoulders or ruining their CV. Do you agree to that? Yes, I agree to that, okay. And then secondly, also, I'd like my bills paid at every 7 days. The usual terms of business are 14, but with you I'd like it to be 7 days. Do you agree to that? Yes, I agree to that. He kept going to stand up, and I just stayed seated. And he said, right, thank you very much for coming. I said, well, there is just one other thing. I could see him inwardly sighing, just beginning to get a little bit irritated with me. And this one I didn't really have to do, I just wanted to do it. I just said, and could you please tell me the name of the person who was kind enough to recommend me to you? And he said, I never disclose my sources. It was very deep. And I said, well, that's a great shame, because I never don't say thank you for a kindness that's paid me. And I just stayed seated and just didn't say another word. And the seconds passed by, and then he said, David Kimball, how very kind, the global head of Spencer Stewart. Thank you very much indeed for letting me know that, because I would like to thank him for the kind reference. And with that we parted. We never had a problem. Everything's paid, everything's sorted. I came out thinking, okay, now then, bring it on. I just thought, yes, you just face down people like that and you just don't have a problem. And I asked nothing that wasn't reasonable, and he knew that. And I certainly never got a bad debt. So that was the kind of assertiveness. I went back and told the girls. They knew I was shaking like a jelly, because I told them I really don't want to go. I was very, very upfront. They knew how frightened I was. And they were with me when I got back, dying to see what state I was in, checking me for bruises, and there we were. And I then found myself suddenly transmogrified into this person in the newspaper, looking a bit like Maggie Thatcher, I think, and note the shoulders. And I was still just the school teacher, just trying to help every single person I saw into a really good situation, leading the team, and always having 1 or 2 people right beside me, breathing the air I was breathing, seeing what I was doing and why I was doing it, so that they could learn to be as accurate as I was about making fits, making good predictions as to where someone will work out well, and knowing how to handle people in such a way that you're influencing them always for the best of themselves, not to manipulate things for the good of the company. Always putting the client and the candidate first. If you do that, it doesn't matter if you don't place them, they'll always know you've been the honest arbiter, and that's always been the absolute guiding force of the company, and the trust and integrity that comes with that. So moving on, everything was going spiffingly well, offices opening up all over, until this happened. And I was actually in the office watching as it happened, and people who are normally busy away were all just watching it too. I thought, what's going on here? What's that? What's that? Of course, none of us knew at the time, but of course we all know now. My daughter was actually in New York at that time, so when it happened, quickly phone called and, yeah, yada, yada, yada. I'm on my way to work, Mum. Yeah, bye. And then, okay, Mum. Okay, get the picture. I've gone home. Fine. Okay, now people breathe again. However, the phones just didn't ring for the next month. Nothing. We had 1/3 of our force graduates. We had to let them all go. There was no work, nothing for them to do. No one was changing jobs. No one was recruiting. All we could do was just be comforting to people and say, well, it will change, and we haven't left you. And put together and organise meetings such as this and do trainings just to kill time until life returned to the normal. But it was a huge blow. It's when you make people redundant, it's very damaging to everyone in the company, not just the person made redundant. Everyone feels bad, and everyone feels bad if they know they're not making their money. To save any more redundancies, we discussed and agreed within the staff that everyone would take a 1/3 salary cut. Fabulous, we all love doing that. It was either that or say goodbye to some more of us and have all that knowledge go out the window, and we all loved each other. So we did that. 2 years later, the whole lot was repaid, so we're all back again in full force. But that really tied us over. But still, what to do? Because no job specifications. What's the point of interviewing someone for no jobs? So we came up with another idea, the little pink book. And this was to do really, if you want to put a label on it now, a psychological label, you can say, well, it was a way of improving the resilience and the mental strength of everyone in the company. We simply rang all our clients and asked them, if there's ever anything we've done for you, any of you, that you appreciate, would you please be very kind and just write it down for us and send it to us, because we want to make a book of it, because that would be a very nice thing for us to do. And if you like, it's a bit like Peter Pan when Tinkerbell drank the poison intended for Captain Hook. And he said, if you believe in fairies, clap your hands. And it was just like that. It was absolutely amazing. And 1 year later, we used that book as the basis of an award for excellence. And of course, it was nothing to do with me. It was to do with the company, the excellence of the company, that all those people were making their attributions. And we still have that. I have one at home. We have one in the office for anyone to read, just to make everyone remember just how much they're valued. So I think in terms of mental resilience, just feedback, celebrating every single thing you've ever done to get you over a hard time, and always finding the good thing. I wouldn't have taken a degree in psychology if my mother hadn't died in those painful circumstances. So everything that happens, I believe, you just have to look at what is the good thing that's coming out of this? How can I capitalise on it? What is there that I can make sure isn't a waste of space, isn't a waste of energy? What can be translated into positive energy, positive ways of going forward? And learning, I'm really not into exams. I hate taking exams because you might fail, mightn't you? Really don't like it. But I love doing things and learning from people. So the National Youth Ballet, we set that up. We've now got 30 of the alumni working with Matthew Bourne, who also joined National Youth Ballet, and Joanna Lumley, we're all patrons of. And so 30 young people are now professional ballet dancers who never would have been it otherwise. And First Aid Nursing Yemen, amazing anti-terrorist group of people, basically, all female. I was invited to join their council, and it's been a wonderful experience. One lady there's 78 years old, she's learning Chinese, and it'll take her, she thinks, about 6 months. And it won't take very long with that, she's already got 6 languages. An amazing group of people behind enemy lines, doing all kinds of stuff, no one ever hears about them. I worked for the prison service, doing mentoring for the governors, because of course the governors in prison as much as the inmates. And so they have the same terrible time and restrictions and pressures that the inmates do, different ones, but they're still there. The CBI, lobbying group. I was lobbying for women in the workplace, flexible working hours, the baccalaureate, bring in more modern education, let people learn what they need to learn in order to survive well in the outside life. And of course, IMA, the International Management Assistance, which is the body which all of you ought to be members of if you're not already, which is an international organisation, completely global now, which is to do with the training and development of support staff, whatever the title they run under. An amazing organisation. And this is the change of employment patterns. Look at that. Now this is back in 55 and through to 2012. And the number of people employed by General Motors now shrunk to nothing practically. And Apple, wow, up it goes there. The top 6 most productive companies right now are all in the technological field. Thank you, next. That's the risk of automation. The whole panel's just been talking about that. I've got a little list of things on the next page. 50% of jobs are going to be automated. You should be looking at just how many of those affect you. Moving on to the next one, so we can run out of time otherwise. We are at record employment levels, but that's very much because there's so many part-time employees at the moment, and also people who are self-employed. There's very much the trend. The new demographic shows so many people opting to go into startups just because they don't want to put up with going into a big company and having a slippery pole to fall up and down. And looking at your security there, I don't know how well you can read that. That's Mitsubishi figures. That's when they were looking at getting rid of 10,000 of their bankers just in Hong Kong. Why? Because you could do it quicker by going than by having a bunch of blokes all working it out. And that's already happened. On we go. So how to perk yourself up, and where do we go to for where is our security? I've got those women up there because all of them I think are hugely creative. Just run through each of them. This is Julia to the Middletons. Moving on. Kath Kitson, you all know her. And then the next one, you probably don't know her. She's the architect of the London Eye. Now here's a nice example. What a creative spirit she had to be able to design the London Eye. One of her architects said, okay, fine, lovely idea, Julia, but let's double up the number of pods. Let's just, so they digitalised it, came up with double the number of pods. Oh, dearie, dearie me. Because when you put the extra ones up there, you can't see anymore because the pods are in the way. So numbers aren't always the answer. And I think that was a very nice example of how she had a lovely idea. Someone else really screwed it up. It looked like it had been so clever because you double your revenue. But it wasn't that way. And Amanda Waitley, how creative with her clothing industry, and on we go. And now this is the mother of Claudia Winkleman. You all know her, don't you? It's Eve Pollard, who actually survived under Robert Maxwell for years and years by always having her glass of wine in her handbag. So drinking with everyone, as she picked up her stories, on we go. And Pruleith, who at the age of 71, 72 is just remarried, sensibly living down the road from the bloke because we all want it to last a bit longer than that. And look at how well she's done for herself. Now, why hasn't she retired? In fact, why isn't she dead? Because people aren't supposed to live this long and go on having productive lives, are they? And this is something I think for all of you. This is going to be happening to you. You're going to be living for much longer than your parents did. And you have an option of either being productive or having a very dull last 30 years of your life. Unless you think about what you want to do and what skills you want to develop along the way. And suddenly you've got so many more opportunities for you. I only had secretarial nursing and what was it? Secretarial nursing and being a teacher. Yeah. On we go. And Brigitte, she is the highest ranking female officer ever. She had 800 men under her in Afghanistan. That doesn't sound very good, did it? Okay, so wake up and solve the robots and just think about it. I'd much prefer to have one of those making my coffee rather than someone who hasn't learned how to get the milk together and get me served in and out quickly. Ex Machina, watch the film if you can get hold of it. She's beautiful and she's dangerous because she doesn't take maternity leave. She doesn't want to have babies. She doesn't have moods. She doesn't get a bit stroppy. Doesn't have a bad weekend. She doesn't have an attitude. She never gets tired. She works 24/7 and she never goes around thinking, I work 24/7. She just does it with a smile and looks beautiful and doesn't sweat at all. No sweat. Now, save on that one. I just want you to look for a minute. Just look at it and just think how many of those things can be done better by a robot. Research, Google, presentations, translations. Because therein lies your threat. If 2/3 of that can be taken off you, that leaves you with 1/3 of your job left. And certainly everything we see now reflected in the workplace, when employers now come to us for a PA or top administrator, so many different names, they're not looking for someone who hasn't got a degree. They want a degree. or they want something which makes it quite clear on paper that they've made it without one, that they've been to the University of Life. But they want someone with a level of sophistication of thinking. They certainly want someone who wants to give more than just turning up and going home. They want someone who's going to give creative input. Can we just move on to the next one? These are the skill bases, the person specs that we're looking to. They're lifted directly off the last job specification. The last job specification we've had in the last 3 or 4 months that are paying between 60 and 100,000 in London. So these would be top PA or business executives of multinationals, or it could be a small to medium-sized enterprise where the top people just want to have someone who can really run with the board. So those are the words they're looking for. And you notice resilience, certainly one. Prioritisation. I think that's a very difficult one for computers to do. Communication skills. You can buy a dog now as a pet in Japan. It'll do everything for you. It'll bark, it'll snuggle, but it doesn't need to go for walks. It'll look very cute and it doesn't do poops. And this is a really, very popular toy they have now. They have them instead of dogs because it works in their little houses. Why am I talking about that? It doesn't mind me. It's a thought, isn't it? It's amazing. Interpersonal skills. There again there's a restaurant in Japan where all the waiters are robots. And they'll say, hello, my name is C133, how can I help you? If they go to all that trouble to do a robot, why don't you just give it a name like Henry or something, I don't know. Anyway, you can do that. I think that this is the extremity because I think in the end, it's very lonely being a chief executive. And these interpersonal skills are what stops someone from having a nervous breakdown. Being able to share, my God, I just don't know what the hell to do. Look at this, it's all happening at the same time, a perfect storm. Being able just to unload with someone who isn't going to go straight down the corridor and tell everyone else, someone who they can share with. I think that's a very important part of the role of support staff, to be able to be that person who can, they know it will go no further. It won't even go as far as the wife, although she'll have a nervous breakdown, and then he'll have a terrible time, or she'll have a terrible time when she gets home. I say wife, of course it could just as easily be, can you just go back one sec? Judgment and discretion. I think that's a very difficult one to emulate at the moment with computers. But having said that, we just on to the next one. You have these stupidities. That's where you have to make a choice to finish up with the biggest number. Hopefully, most of you are going to go for the brown routing. Even I managed that one. But greedy algorithms, just sets of rules, can lead you into stupid situations unless you're really checking. Move on to the next one, please. Thank you. The amygdala, the little green bit there, that little green bit is something that every single animal has. It's your fight or flight response. And whether you like it or not, every single thing you eat, think, breathe, smell, listen to, goes through that. And there's some kind of a memory, some kind of immediate response, positive, negative. You walk into a lift and smell someone's perfume, oof, or It's reminding you of something, as an association somewhere. You can't even pin it down, it's such an ancient thought, because it's one of the most ancient parts of your brain, but it's the seat of your emotions and your emotional memories. And that's what helps you have the empathy and develop the opportunity of being the support you can be to someone who's going through all the stress of running a company. All those people would need to have some kind of an empathy like that, or some kind of creative inspiration like that. Move on to the next one. Lifelong learning, that's been going on and on now for so long. It's never been truer than now. But I think perhaps it used to be lifelong learning. You think, oh my God, lifelong, I thought I just left school, but no, on we go, on we go. Yeah, but I think that the important thing about this is to look at it from the viewpoint of how exciting and interesting you can make your learning opportunity. I've loved my pro bono roles, absolutely adored them. I've met so many interesting people and learned about so many people I would never, ways of doing things being, that I would never otherwise have come across. With IMA, I've sat down and had supper with the President of Iceland, for God's sake. How many people have a chance like that? I've just mixed and mingled with so many interesting people, but it wasn't just me, it was all the other members of IMA that had that opportunity and did that thing too. If you get out among people, if that's what turns you on, you just have so many opportunities, and instead of it being an old boy network, and instead of being foiled from an opportunity to apply for a job because you haven't got the specific qualifications that are being requested, that are going to sift you out by the very formulaic HR, human remains routing of selection, which can be very, very unimaginative sometimes. If we're talking to the chief executive of an organisation, they don't give a damn what the person is on paper, or they do, but they're ready to be guided. If you say, this person hasn't got 3 of the things you're asking for, but they are dynamite, it would be wrong for you not to see this person. But I think networks such as this can be very much wonderful opener creators for you into roles which otherwise would be closed to you. And human resources do what they have to do. They have thousands of CVs through to them. So I think you can look at how you can be a PA, and that's a wonderful place to be, or you can go off and do other things. And I think just one last example before I close. I was at a networking meeting in the city. No, it wasn't. It was in the West End. Why am I telling you lies? It was in the West End, and the RAC Club. And one lady, when I went and introduced myself, said, "Oh, I'm really pleased to meet you." And she seemed really genuine. Oh, well, how lovely. Why was that? She said, "Well, because a long while ago now, but I got my very first temporary job with you. You put me into Fidelity Bank as a temp. And they made me into a financial analyst. And that was the beginning of my career." I said, "Oh, fantastic. What are you doing now?" "I'm the chief executive of the bank in the Middle East." And so many of our people go on to be chief executives. So many of them. But if you don't want to do that, then don't do that. Stay having a very enjoyable, very rounded career. Others of them go into management, and then they come back out again because it's so boring, managing people, compared with the great variety you have when you're working the top bloke, looking at the politics and looking at the policies of the company. So we have all these opportunities. And just finally, this is the book which I haven't written yet, but I hope I will. And when you're having to sit in a room by yourself, which is something I'm very unused to and not very good at, and not talk to anyone, it gets you thinking about a lot of things, and it makes you want to read about a lot of things to help you clarify your ideas. And one fact I came up with that really interested me was that Henry Ford, the creator of the conveyor belt that made the first family affordable cars, was a young man when he went to a conference run by Thomas Edison, creator of the light bulb, yeah? And Thomas Edison talked to him for a long while about what he was doing. He was mucking around trying to make this car. And he asked him loads of questions about it, and then he said, "You know what? I think you're onto something here," but Thomas Edison said, I think the future's electric cars, but just keep at it. And that's, I think, how I'd like to end for you. Just keep at it. Thank you.